I didn't expect the moment to start with something as ordinary as a broken lamp. The kind of thing people bring into the repair shop half embarrassed, muttering about wires or plugs, as though their clumsiness needed an alibi. She walked in just before closing. Not rushed, not apologetic, just steady, like the world already adjusted to her pace. The first thing I noticed wasn't her looks, though anyone would. Mid-40s, maybe, with streaks of silver running like hidden rivers through her dark hair. No, what caught me was the way she set the lamp down on the counter. Not with care, not with carelessness either, but like it had already disappointed her once. "This thing flickers," she said, her voice low, almost dry. "It's stubborn." I gave a quick smile, instinctive, the kind I always throw out when customers are clipped like that. Good thing I specialize in stubborn things. It earned me nothing, just a long look, one that made me second-guess the joke the moment it left my mouth. I busied myself with the lamp, tugging at wires, pretending I knew exactly where the problem hid. Truth was, my hands felt clumsier than usual, the weight of her silence pressing at me harder than the actual repair. "You're too soft," she said suddenly. My head jerked up. "Sorry. Your grip," she clarified, nodding at the screwdriver slipping in my hand. "Too soft. You'll strip the screw that way." She wasn't wrong. Still, the words landed sharper than they should have. Too soft. I wondered if she meant more than she let on. "Then let me melt for you," I murmured, almost without thinking, my eyes locked on the metal piece as though it mattered more than the words tumbling out. Silence stretched. I regretted it instantly. My face burned as I tightened the screw, deliberately firmer this time. I didn't look up, half afraid I'd find her smirking, or worse, indifferent. But when I finally risked a glance, she wasn't mocking. Her lips were pressed together, faintly curved, as though holding back a reply that would give too much away. The shop was quiet except for the hum of the overhead light, the kind of quiet that doesn't just fill space but sharpens it. Every scrape of my tool, every breath between us, felt louder than it had any right to be. I caught her watching me again, not impatient, not curious, just watching, as though she wanted to see if I'd flinch. I didn't, or at least, I hope I didn't. When the lamp flickered back to life, the warm glow spilled across her face. It softened her in a way the steady, guarded tone of her voice hadn't. I felt it, the shift. Small, almost nothing, but enough to jolt me. "There," I said too quickly. "Working again." She didn't rush to leave. She just rested her fingertips lightly on the lamp's shade, letting the heat settle against her skin. "Not bad," she said, and for the first time her voice carried something lighter. Maybe approval, maybe amusement. I wanted to answer, to say something equally light, but the words dried up. My throat tightened around silence. Instead, I nodded like an idiot. She gave the faintest smile, not wide, not warm, but enough to linger. Then she lifted the lamp, steady as when she'd set it down, and walked out into the evening without another word. The door clicked shut behind her, and I realized my hand still gripped the screwdriver too tightly, the echo of her words, too soft, buzzing louder than the flicker of any broken lamp. I haven't been able to stop thinking about that look she gave me, like she'd seen something I didn't mean to show. She came back 2 days later, not with another broken lamp, with a box. "This is heavier than it looks," she said, shifting it against her hip. I stepped out from behind the counter. "Let me." She almost cut me off. "No, it's fine." But then, a small pause, the kind where the protest dies before it's finished. "Actually, yes. Please." The box wasn't much, old books, maybe. Still, I carried it to the workbench, pretending the weight mattered. She followed, slower, her gaze not on me but on the cluttered shelves lining the walls. "You fix all this yourself?" she asked, her voice casual, but her eyes sharp, like she wanted more than small talk. "Mostly. Some things don't stay fixed, though." She gave a small laugh, low, quick, the kind that escapes without permission. I noticed how it softened her, the way her shoulders dropped, the tension uncoiling for half a second before it snapped back into place. The box did hold books, as I guessed. Worn spines, frayed pages. She pulled one out, a poetry collection, underlined and marked with small, tight handwriting. Hers? Someone else's? I didn't ask. She set it on the bench beside me. Her hand lingered there. Slim fingers, a faint scar near the knuckle. The kind of details you don't mean to memorize, but do anyway. You're observant, I said before I could stop myself. Her brow lifted. How do you mean? You notice everything. Even how I hold a screwdriver. That earned me silence. Not cold, not dismissive, just silence. She looked down at the book instead of me, tracing the underlined lines with her fingertip. I'm used to watching, she said finally. Quiet. Almost as though she was telling herself, not me. The room felt too still then, the hum of the lights pressing in. I wanted to ask, what are you watching for? But something in her face, that guarded half-smile, the tiredness under her eyes, told me not to. Instead, I leaned closer, pretending to study the wiring of a clock on the bench. My hands weren't steady. I don't usually let people help me, she added, softer now. It wasn't about the box. I knew that. I looked up, and for a second, her eyes met mine. Direct, unflinching, but carrying something raw beneath the surface. Vulnerability she probably hadn't meant to show. The moment didn't last. She blinked, straightened, and slipped the book back into the box. Well, I should go. I wanted to stop her, but instead I only nodded. My throat felt too tight for words anyway. At the door, she hesitated, just enough to make me wonder if she'd say something more. She didn't, but the faintest curve of her lips, the ghost of that laugh from earlier, stayed with me. And when the door shut behind her, I found myself staring at the empty space she left, the warmth of her hesitation heavier than the box she'd carried in. The rain started just as I was locking up. Sheets of it, sudden and heavy, beating the pavement into a blur. She was there again. Umbrella half collapsed, hair damp at the ends. Figures, she muttered, glancing at the sky. Always when I forget the good one. Come inside, I said. My voice came out sharper than I meant. Too eager. I softened it. Just until it lets up. She hesitated, then stepped in. The shop felt different with her there after hours. Quieter. Every shadow stretched longer. The tick of the wall clock sounded too loud. I set the kettle on the back shelf to boil, habit more than thought. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, water dripping from her sleeve. You don't have to fuss, she said. I'm not fussing. Just making tea. She gave me a look I couldn't read, somewhere between suspicion and amusement. But she didn't argue. The steam fogged the small window above the sink. She trailed her finger absent-mindedly across the glass, leaving a single line through the condensation. Her body was turned slightly away, but her presence filled the room like heat. Do you ever get lonely in here? She asked suddenly. The question caught me. Sometimes. Doesn't feel empty when I'm fixing things, though. Must be nice. To mend what's broken. Her tone was flat, but I heard the weight beneath it. Something that had nothing to do with lamps or clocks. I wanted to ask. Instead, I poured her tea. My hands trembled just enough to make the cup rattle against the saucer. When I handed it to her, our fingers brushed. Barely, but enough. Her hand was cooler than I expected. She didn't pull away immediately. Neither did I. Then her phone buzzed. She flinched, nearly spilling the tea. Fumbling, she checked the screen, turned it face down before I could see the name. Someone important? I asked, too careful, too casual. No, she said quickly. Then softer, not anymore. Silence folded over us. She lifted the cup, sipped, avoided my eyes. I watched the curve of her throat as she swallowed, and something twisted in me. Restraint, need, confusion, all tangled. Do you? I started, then stopped. I didn't even know what I meant to ask. Her eyes flicked up. For one beat, we just looked at each other. The rain hammered harder outside, pressing the air tighter around us. I wanted to close the space, to say something reckless. But the wall clock ticked louder, reminding me of boundaries I didn't fully understand. Instead, I set my cup down too firmly. Storm should pass soon. Her lips parted as if she might answer, or confess, but the phone buzzed again. Louder this time. She exhaled sharply, almost a sigh, and tucked it back into her bag. The moment was gone, but as she stood near the door, coat half damp, I caught the faintest tremor in her hands. I didn't move closer, but I wanted to. It happened on a Tuesday, late, when the shop should have been empty. She'd stopped by with a clock that wouldn't chime, though I suspected she didn't care about the clock. We worked side by side for longer than needed, her handing me screws, me pretending I needed them. The air felt heavier than the tools between us. At some point, we both grew quiet. Too quiet. Not the comfortable kind. She leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching me tighten a bolt that didn't need tightening. Finally, her voice broke through. "What are we doing?" The question hung there, heavier than the rainstorm from last week. I froze, the screwdriver slipping from my grip, clattering onto the bench. I wanted to answer. I didn't know how. She shook her head, half a laugh, half a sigh. "This," she gestured vaguely, between us, around us, maybe at the silence itself. "This isn't normal." My throat felt dry. "Does it have to be?" Her eyes snapped to mine. Sharp, searching, but beneath it, tired. Tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. "Don't," she said. Soft, almost pleading. "Don't make it sound simple." I swallowed. "Tried again." "I'm not trying to. I can't pretend it's nothing." Her jaw tightened. She looked down at her hands. Those steady, careful hands. And for once they trembled. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But I did. "Do you know what this looks like?" she asked, her voice low. "To the outside world? To me?" I almost said I don't care. But the word stuck. Because I did care. About how she carried herself. About how fragile her composure felt in this moment. "You think I don't notice?" she went on, quieter now. "The way you watch me. The way she stopped. Drew in a sharp breath. "The way I don't stop you." The silence after that could have broken glass. I stepped closer, not touching her, just enough to feel the heat of her presence. My heart rattled against my ribs, begging for more, but I stayed rooted. "I don't know what this is," I whispered, "but I know it's not nothing." Her eyes lifted, locking onto mine. The stare lasted too long. Long enough to burn. And then she said the one thing I wasn't ready for. "You make me feel like I've been asleep for years, and I don't know if I want to wake up." The words cut deeper than touch ever could. She came in carrying nothing this time. No lamp, no clock, no excuse. Just herself. I knew something was different the second she stepped inside. Her posture wasn't guarded, not tonight. She looked tired, yes, but also stripped of whatever armor she usually carried. "I shouldn't be here," she said. No greeting, no explanation. I closed the ledger I hadn't been reading. And yet, her lips pressed into a faint, bitter smile. She moved to the counter, leaning on it as if standing took effort. From her bag, she pulled out a phone, unlocked it, then set it face up between us. On the screen, a voicemail. She didn't press play right away. Instead, she stared at it, her thumb hovering just above the button. "It's from him." I didn't ask who him was. The way her voice cracked on the single word told me enough. Finally, she tapped. The message played, muffled, strained. A man's voice, thick with regret. Apologies spilling into static. Words like "I should have stayed, and you didn't deserve that, and I still think of you." Her face didn't move as it played, but her hands did. Fingers clenched, unclenched, like she was holding herself together by force. When it ended, the silence was unbearable. "I deleted the first 3 he left," she said, voice low. "But I kept this one. I don't know why. I wanted to ask. I wanted to say something to bridge the sharp ache in the air. But all I managed was, 'Does he want you back?'" Her laugh was soft, hollow. "He wants absolution. And maybe I want to hear him beg for it." She finally looked at me then, eyes rimmed with something rawer than exhaustion. "You remind me of him. Before." The words landed heavy. My stomach tightened. "Before what?" I asked. Her gaze lingered, unflinching, almost cruel in its honesty. "Before he broke me." The room tilted. For a moment, I didn't know whether to step toward her or away. I hated that I carried even a shadow of that man in me. Hated that she saw it. And yet, a part of me understood why she said it. I swallowed hard, choosing my words carefully. "I'm not him." She nodded slowly, as if she'd been waiting for me to say it. But her eyes still searched mine, doubtful, needing proof I couldn't give in words. The clock on the wall ticked once, twice. She didn't look away. Neither did I. Then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, she said, "That's what scares me." It was late. Too late for her to be here. Too late for me to pretend I wasn't waiting for her. She didn't knock this time. Just pushed the door open and stepped inside, her eyes already finding me at the workbench. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was weighted, like something fragile balanced between us. I can't keep doing this, she said finally. I set down the screwdriver I hadn't needed. Then don't. Her jaw tightened. It's not that simple. I took a slow breath, searching for words I'd fumbled before. Maybe it is. Maybe we just stop lying about what this is. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp, wary, but softer than before. She walked toward me, each step deliberate, as though testing how close she could stand before the air broke. What is this? She asked. I wanted to answer with certainty, but the truth was murkier, more human. I shook my head slightly. I don't know, but it's real. Her shoulders dropped, just enough to let me see the weight she carried. She leaned against the edge of the bench, inches from me now. I could smell the faint trace of rain in her hair, the warmth of her skin in the cool air of the shop. I don't want to hurt you, she said, voice raw. And I don't want to be rescued. I'm not here to rescue you. I whispered. I just don't want to look away anymore. The silence after that wasn't empty. It held everything we hadn't said, everything we couldn't. I watched her hand rest against the bench, her fingers close but not touching mine. I didn't reach for her. Not yet. Instead, I let the space breathe. She turned her head then, meeting my gaze. For once, there was no guarded mask, no sharp retort. Just the bare truth of someone who had been tired too long. Her hand shifted, barely, and brushed against mine. Not a grasp, not a clutch, just the faintest contact. Enough to send a current through me, steady and undeniable. We stayed like that, side by side, hands almost but not fully joined. The tick of the wall clock marked each second we didn't move away. Finally, she exhaled, slow and trembling. Maybe we're both too soft, she said. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Then let's not fight it. Her eyes closed, just for a moment, as if those words gave her permission to rest. When she opened them, she didn't smile, didn't weep, just leaned the slightest bit closer, her forehead nearly brushing mine. No declarations, no promises, just the quiet collapse of two people who had run out of ways to pretend. And in that stillness, in that shared silence, we both knew. Whatever this was, it had already begun. I think about that night more than I should. Not because of what happened, but because of what didn't. There were no grand declarations. No fireworks. No sudden transformation of our lives into something easier. Just two people standing too close, not brave enough to call it love, but too honest to call it nothing. That was the shift. Not a kiss. Not a promise. Just the quiet knowledge that we had stopped pretending. Looking back now, I realized she gave me more than her presence. She gave me a kind of education I didn't know I needed. About patience. About silence. About how love isn't always loud and obvious. Sometimes it's in the way someone looks at you and doesn't turn away, even when it would be easier. She carried her scars, her regrets, the ghosts of someone who had broken her once. And maybe I reminded her of him in ways that hurt. But I also reminded her, I think, of who she was before that. The part of herself she thought she'd lost. And she gave me something too. A glimpse of what it means to see another person as they are, not as you want them to be. I used to think love was about chasing, about proving yourself. With her, it was about stillness. About staying in the room when the silence turned heavy. About letting someone's trembling hand rest near yours and knowing that was enough. We didn't rush into anything after that night. We didn't need to. The air between us had changed, and once it changed, there was no going back. I catch myself sometimes, thinking about the way she leaned her forehead toward mine, stopping just shy of touch. That tiny act carried more weight than 100 desperate embraces. It was her way of saying, I'm here, even if I don't know how long I can be. And maybe that's the lesson I keep with me now, that love doesn't always arrive with certainty. Sometimes it's fragile, temporary, or impossible to name. But that doesn't make it less real. If anything, it makes it more. Because we don't remember the easy things. We remember the ones that made us ache, the ones that asked us to grow. I don't know where we'll end up, her and me. Maybe this was only meant to be a season, a brief crossing of paths. Or maybe it will unfold into something larger, steadier, unexpected. But I do know this. She changed the way I see love. Not as something to win, or hold, or demand, but as something to sit with, even when it's complicated. Especially then. And maybe that's enough. If you've ever felt a pull towards someone you shouldn't, or someone who saw you in a way no one else did, tell me in the comments. I'd like to know, what moment stays with you, the one you can't forget?